Hello, everybody. My name's Joe Ward. I'm a volunteer with Serve, and today's workshop is going to be about cover letters, following the recent workshop by Julius and by Brian on your skills and putting that in the form of a CV. So let me talk about what today's session is going to include. First of all, the session should take about 45 minutes, this recording. And the first thing I'm going to do is take you through the structure of a cover letter. So we're going to talk about the three parts of a cover letter. The first part of a cover letter is the hook, which is very important because if you don't get your hook correct, then people won't read the rest of your cover letter. The second part is the body, and this is where a lot of the content is. You're going to talk about your skills, you're going to talk about your experience here, and you're going to talk about why that makes you the perfect person for the job that you're applying for. And finally, you're going to have the ending, obviously, of the cover letter. The ending is very similar, regardless of what cover letter you're writing. The hook and the body should be very different from letter to letter, depending on the post, depending on the job that you're applying for. You should have a very different hook for a job that is at an office or a job that is with a farm. And the ending, as you'll see later, can be a bit more of a template that you can just swap little words in and out. After we look at the structure of a cover letter, I'm going to go through some general do's and don'ts. These are just tips, things you should do and things you shouldn't do in relation to cover letters. Originally, this was supposed to be a live workshop, so I was going to ask you your opinion, but I'll still pause here so that when you're watching this back, you can maybe have a discussion in your group about whether you would do this or you wouldn't do this for a cover letter, and I'll give some examples later and it'll be clearer what I mean. At the end of this session, I'm going to have some example job postings, and the homework for this session is to respond to these job postings with a cover letter, an example cover letter, to see what you've learned from this and to try and implement that into your cover letter. So let's get started. First of all, like I said, we're going to talk about the structure of a cover letter. So there's three parts to the structure, which I've already outlined. The hook, the body, and the ending. Number one, the hook. This is the most important part of your cover letter. Most applications that are seen by recruiters, by people hiring, they are only looked at for 6 or 7 seconds. That's the average statistic for how long someone usually looks at a cover letter or a CV. What you want to do with your hook is to make it so interesting and make yourself stand out that they spend a long time reading and they get right to the end of your letter. So how are we going to do this? We really need to draw the reader in. We want to make it personal, this first part of our letter, and I'll show you an example in a minute. And you want to make it very specific and particular to the organization that you're applying for. If the organization or the person reading your letter thinks this is the same letter that you have sent to other businesses, it's very generic, it's not saying much about our organization, then that comes off as lazy because you haven't written this cover letter specifically for this job. So in the hook, again, it's going to be a short introduction. Keep it snappy. Here I say 5 sentences. You can go a little over this. And I think my example in the next slide does, but only go over 5 sentences if you're introducing your core strengths. So in the previous session, Brian talked a bit about getting your core strengths, thinking about them, and relating them then to jobs that you could apply for. So this is when you need to look at those core strengths, see which of them is going to suit the job that you're applying for at that moment, and try and introduce 3 in this hook. And I'll show you in the example in the next slide how I do that. This gives really clear focus to what your body is going to be about. So the body is that second part that comes after the hook in a cover letter. So this is my example of a hook. I call this one the personal backstory. And it is very personal. It shows a passion for the occupation that you're applying to. So this one particularly is about farming. As you can see, the first few sentences are very personal. They say, "I'll never forget the first time I first stepped on a farm. I was 15 years old when I first gave my uncle a hand during the harvest season. From that day forward, I never looked back." So this is the personal aspect. It's not giving your skills and experience straight away. You're not saying, "I'm going to be a great person for this job." You're easing them into it and you're giving them your story. Moving on from that, it says it's incredibly motivating to know that your hard work is putting food on the table for countless families. Again, this is emotive. You're appealing to a passion for farming, and then we get into the reason that you should be hired. So the next sentence says, "This is why I am leaping at the chance to apply my 4 years of experience." So you're talking about your experience, and the next part talks about skills, "alongside my 1 analytical, 2 practical, and 3 relationship building skills." So you can see those bolded and underlined here. And then it gives reference to the job that this person is applying to help shape the future of farming with the Ministry of Agriculture. So this person wants a job with the Ministry of Agriculture, and they've started by saying why they are so passionate about farming. And they've moved on from that to say that they've got a lot of experience, and they've given us these 3 strengths: analytical, practical, and relationship building. Now, I would expect that this person is going to give examples of all of these strengths below in the body of their cover letter, because anybody can say that they have analytical skills, that they're very practical, and that they're good at building relationships. You have to back this up with examples. It's not good enough to say it and to think that your hiring manager will be convinced. So this, like I said, is an example where you use a personal backstory. Other ideas for having a kind of interesting start to your cover letter is that you could try that you were inspired by the organization's leader. If there's a company and you know who founded it, maybe you have a connection to them, like they went to the same school as you, the same university as you, they're from the same town as you, and you look up to that person, then you can mention that in this first part. It's something different that adds a bit of color to your CV. You know, something to remember you by from the employer's perspective. Other ideas include telling that employer that you have the same core values as the organization that they work for, and that's why you'd like to work for them. If this is an NGO, it might work quite well. If they work on, you know, community building and you have volunteer experience, then you can prove that you have the same core values as this NGO. The last idea I have here for a hook is maybe you are a long-time consumer of the brand. Maybe you like this company because you like what they produce. You use it in your own life. Maybe you're applying to work in a toy shop and your parent used to bring you here when you were really sad, or maybe on your birthday. And so you have a real connection because you have so many happy memories related to this, and this is where you bring your kids now. That can show that you have a connection and an affinity with this shop, company, whatever. Anywhere where you use their product, you can also use that as a way of starting off your hook to say, this is important to me because it plays a big role in my life. So that's the hook done. That's the first part. Like I said, keep it short. 5, 6, maximum 7 sentences for that. How many did I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is quite short actually, and it applies to the rule that I have here of max 5 sentences. Moving on to the body, this is going to be a longer section. And it's going to be about 3 paragraphs. I would recommend keeping it to 3 paragraphs and to base each paragraph on one of the core strengths that you have mentioned in your hook. So in this hook, we have analytical, practical, and a relationship builder. I would use each paragraph in the body to outline why that's true. And use examples from your past experiences, whether it's work experience, from school, from university, from your hobbies, from your family life, community work or volunteering that you do. Use examples to prove that these are core strengths that you have. Don't copy paste directly from your CV. I know you're talking about your experience and maybe you have some sentences and descriptions of your experience ready to go because you've written a fantastic CV. That's really good, but they already have your CV. And it does look lazy if you're copying from that and directly saying the same thing again in your cover letter. Plus, you want to use this opportunity to say something new and to sell yourself in a different way, to make other points, because a cover letter is still really important for an employer. As you can see in the picture here, you can really, you know, get on somebody's good side with the right cover letter. So that's it for the body. And like I said, that's going to be the longest part. That's going to take up most of your space on the page. And then the ending is very straightforward. I use the same format for every ending, and you can see it here on the screen. You thank the person who's read your cover letter for reading it and for considering it. Like I said earlier, people often only give a few seconds to looking over CVs and resumes. If they've made it this far in the letter, then you know it's worth thanking them for putting in that effort. After that, you're going to hit on your main points again, talk about your work experience very briefly, just mention it, and then mention a skill that you've already talked about before. Don't introduce anything new in your ending. Don't talk about a skill that hasn't been brought up in the body and in the hook. You want to keep it consistent and for the strengths to same strengths to come up again and again, so that it really puts that message in the employer's mind. Yeah, you mentioned the company name. So the way I've structured this sentence is the second sentence is my work experiences coupled with my affinity for whatever skill you have, whether it's sales is the example I give here, would make me a valuable asset. Just means you'd be a good employee. Make me a valuable asset to, and put in your company name here. One of the example companies in the homework at the end is World Vision. So you would say, would make me a valuable asset to World Vision. And if you're applying to be an accountant with them, then World Vision's accountancy team would be how you conclude that sentence. Finally, you say that you'd love an interview. I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to expand my CV and motivation in an interview. That sentence you can copy paste for any job at the end of your cover letter. And same goes for the last sentence here. I can easily be reached by email or by telephone. Those details will also be in your CV, but it just makes it a bit easier for the person who is hiring if you give them to it wherever you can. This isn't an essential sentence. If your cover letter is getting a bit long, this might be one that you take out. And then you sign off, sincerely, followed by your name. So that's it for the structure. If you have any questions, I will give my email at the end, and feel free to, not only send me questions about this, but about anything, and I'll give homework later. Feel free to reach out to me for feedback on that as well. So general do's and don'ts is the next part of this presentation. So I'm going to talk about things you should do, things you shouldn't do, and a bit about why. So starting off, here we have a nice graphic. My first thing that you absolutely need to do is read the job posting carefully. Make sure you understand what they're looking for and how you can appeal to that, how you can match what you have to offer with what they want. And it's good to make this really clear for yourself before you even start writing your cover letter. I do this 2-column table, and in one side of the column, I'll show you here as an example. In one side of the column, here on the left, you have what they want. So all of the boxes on the left, I have taken from the job posting, the main responsibilities and the required skills. So you will always, or nearly always, have those two categories, those two headings in a job posting. If you find it online, a forum for Zambia is gozambiajobs.com. If you find a job on there, they're going to have these subheadings called main responsibilities, and then they'll have bullet points outlining those. And then the next subheading is usually required skills or experience. And again, they'll have bullet points saying what they're looking for. So I like to copy and paste these bullet points into my left side of the table, and that's what they want. That's what they're looking for. And so I think about my own CV, think about my own experience, my university, my work experience, my volunteering experience, my hobbies, anything I can think of. that might go in the right column of what I have to offer that matches the required skill that they're looking as an employer. And it's not that you need to have absolutely everything. I would advise people to apply for a job if they feel like they match 60%. 60% of the job posting is all that I feel you need to match in order to make a case for yourself, get to that interview stage, and then once you're there, anything can happen. They might like you. So yeah, this is my first do. Create this 2-column table, read the job posting really carefully, and make sure you understand how you can connect yourself to every one of the skills that they're looking for. And if you think hard enough, you'll find a way to argue for anything. If they're looking for leadership skills and you think, well, I've never been a leader of a team in a work setting before. You could, however, have been, you might be a parent. You might have been the oldest child and looked after siblings. You might have been captain of a soccer team. All of this shows leadership skills. Even if it's not in the work setting, it's better than not putting down anything if they make that clear that that's important to them. So moving on to my first don't. My first thing to avoid, don't do this in your cover letter, is don't be generic. So don't be the same in all of your cover letters. You need to write a different letter every time so that the person reading knows that you're writing for them. This is not the same letter that you've sent to every job posting for an office assistant, for example. Or if you're an accountant, you haven't written one letter that outlines why you would make a great accountant and then sent it to a bunch of companies. Because it should feel personal. Like we talked about earlier, your hook needs to feel personal. So don't be generic is the word I've used here. And generic terms that we see again and again and again in a cover letter include these ones. Uniquely qualified, I'm results oriented, I think outside the box. These sound very good, but they are used so much by everybody. A study found that the phrase uniquely qualified was in 3 out of 10 cover letters, which is not very unique and not the point you're trying to get across. So I would say don't use these terms. And you might be thinking, well, earlier in your example cover letter, you use terms like analytical, practical, relationship builder. These are also very generic terms. So how come it's okay to do it there? Well, I say that it's okay to use generic terms as long as you can use examples to show that this is in fact the case. So don't overuse them. I've only used 3 in the hook, but if you can, in the body of your cover letter, if you can back up each of these 3 strengths or traits by using examples from your previous work experience, from your academic background, then it's tangible. It's something that isn't just a nice sounding word that you've used. It's actually true. And I can prove it to you because I have this experience. The example here I've used for giving an example in your cover letter is in brackets here, or in quotation marks rather, my strong motivation. So that's the trait, strong motivation. So that would be something I've seen in the job posting. This word, they want somebody who has strong motivation. So My strong motivation is demonstrated by my academic background. I was able to graduate in just 3 years, 1 year ahead of the average for my program. So let's look at these two sentences. First thing I do is I identify the core strength that I have. So again, this is something that they're looking for. I've highlighted it in the 2-column table that I made. They want somebody with strong motivation. Then I've thought, well, how can I prove that I have strong motivation? Well, I did very well at school. So that could be a point to prove that I have strong motivation. So I link those two things, academic background being my example of the strong motivation, and then I link it and prove it. This is really important, this underlined part, by saying I was able to graduate in 3 years, 1 year ahead of the average for my program. It's not enough to say my strong motivation is demonstrated by my academic background. You need to tell them why your schooling was very good, why that proves that you've got strong motivation. Okay, so that's all for do number 2. Don't number 2. Another thing you shouldn't do, and I've mentioned it already, but it's good to say again, don't take things directly from your CV. Like I said earlier, you might be really happy with how you've described work experience on your CV, and so you're tempted just to take that directly and put it into the body of your cover letter. It looks lazy, and you're also not using the language of the job posting because you wrote the CV before you looked at the job posting. So you want to make sure that you're using the terms in the job posting. If they say they want somebody who's motivated, then that word motivated should come up in your body of your cover letter. And it may not be in how you've described a work experience on your CV. So I think that's clear. So this is an exercise you can do if you're watching in a group. I'm going to go through a few more do's and don'ts, but I'm not going to give you the answer straight away. So these are ones that are a bit more subjective. You can give your opinion on it, give your thoughts on it, and it's a good one to discuss and to debate. So I'll also give my opinion, by the way, on each of these. So the first do or don't is write at least 2 pages. Do you think this is a good idea? Is this too short, too long? How long should a cover letter be? So if you're watching this in a group, maybe pause and discuss that for a second. Okay, so my answer to this is don't. Absolutely do not write 2 pages. That's too long. Maximum 1 page, and preferred 3/4 of a page. Hiring managers don't have all day. Business owners, whoever is looking at your cover letter, will appreciate if it's a bit shorter. And they can see instantly how long it is before they start reading. If they see that it's 2 pages or longer than 2 pages, they're not likely to keep reading. And understandably so. So my second do or don't is open with or address your letter with to whom it may concern. So again, if you want to pause here, discuss what are the pros, the cons, and if there's any confusion about what I mean with open with, it's the person you're addressing the letter to before you start your hook. So right at the top of the letter. Do you think this is a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Now is time to share your thoughts with one another. My opinion is that this is a don't, a big don't, because in my opinion, nobody speaks like this anymore, and that is really off-putting, and it's not going to go well with your hook. That is quite a modern technique. That is, appealing to somebody's emotions. To whom it may concern is without color. It's a really gray, traditional, old-fashioned way to address a letter. I think a general good tip when you're reading your cover letter, proofreading it after you've written it, if it sounds weird when you read it out loud, like it's not something you would say, then you've probably written it in too traditional a manner. Instead of to whom it may concern, try and get their name. If you know who will be looking at your cover letter, then this is the best thing to do. Get their name and just say, dear whoever that is. If you absolutely can't find their name, then dear hiring manager, or if it's a big company, dear hiring team also works. So my last do or don't, again, take some time, pause here if you want to discuss, is use bullet points, subheadings, and bold. So I think you all know what this is, but I have this example here. So if you're writing your cover letter on a computer and you have these options available to you to use bold, for example, here, this person has bolded that they have almost 2 years of experience in fashion and retail. So if you follow the arrow there pointing to the bold, you'll see that they thought this was really important and they wanted it to stand out before the person reading had, maybe it stands out to them before they're reading or it stands out to them as they're reading, but this is a key point from the writer's perspective. They've also used subheadings underneath here to separate the different categories of skills, and maybe they think it's a bit more structured. And under each subheading they have bullet points. So do you think cover letter should look like this, or should it be more traditional and just paragraph, sign off, so that's what I want you to discuss with this question. Again, maybe you want to pause here and give some time. If you're in a big group, give a show of hands who's in favor of using these techniques, the bullet points, subheadings, and the bold, and who's not in favor, who thinks this isn't a good idea. So pause here if you want to discuss. I say do use these. Do use bullet points, do use subheadings, do use bold. Don't use it maybe as much as it is here. I think particularly the bullet points, there are too many of them, but I think that this makes it easier to read and that it just allows the reader to get through it faster. If the reader is bored with your first or your second paragraph, then they might skip ahead and look at a subheading. If you don't have any subheadings, however, then they might be likely just to stop reading. So this is more of a preference. Some people still don't use these, techniques, or they don't employ that in their cover letters. But in my opinion, this is the way that it's going. So that's the end of my presentation, my part. If you have any questions about the do's and don'ts or the structure, if any comments at all, I'll give my email with this. I'll say it now, actually. It's joeward2000@gmail.com. JOEWARD 2000 @gmail.com, and feel free to reach out to me. The last thing I'll leave you with is this bit of homework. So practice the hook. This is a difficult part, especially if you haven't written one before. It's difficult to get right. And so if you want to just practice that, then do that. If you want to do a whole cover letter, that's good too. But obviously you need a job to apply for. So I picked out some example jobs from gozambiajobs.com. If you ask Milimo, he should have the handouts for this. And there are 4 jobs in total. There's one for a teacher, another for an agricultural officer, an office assistant, and a cinema worker. So there should be something in there for all skill levels and a few different industries. Yeah, so good luck with that. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you want any feedback on this, or if you've got any questions about the presentation, then I'm here to help. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and yeah, looking forward to hearing from you.